Before you start, write in the comments what you think about honesty in relationships and the importance of cultural heritage. Stay tuned, and don't forget to subscribe to hear how family values can protect against cheating. In a small but picturesque town on the East Coast live 14-year-old Sarah and her father Marcus. Their home is a cozy place where family photos adorn the walls, and in every corner you can feel the spirit of their family's history and heritage. Marcus is a widower, known locally for his kindness and professionalism as a local doctor who is always ready to help. After years of loneliness, he has finally decided on a new stage of life and is planning a wedding with a woman named Lauren, whom he met a few months ago. Lauren is a striking, confident woman, and her blonde appearance attracts the attention of others, although few people in their town know her yet. For Sarah, this event causes two feelings. On the one hand, she is happy for her father and sees how happy he looks for the first time in many years. On the other hand, she feels uneasy. Her father, with his desire for a better future, is so infatuated with Lauren that sometimes it seems that he does not notice her smallest but strange actions. Lauren rarely asks about their family's traditions, and although she is always polite to Sarah, her attention to the girl seems strained. Lauren's gaze, her slightly strained smile, and her unwillingness to show genuine interest in their lives makes Sarah a little tense. As Marcus prepares for the wedding, he orders the family's favorite dishes to be included in the holiday menu, and Sarah is already dreaming about how they can reunite and become a real family again. She thinks that something is wrong with Lauren, but she tries to suppress these thoughts, hoping that the wedding will really bring their family happiness. Family and friends are preparing for the celebration, but Sarah feels that she needs to be alert. After her father's announcement about his upcoming wedding to Lauren, Sarah's life was filled with unsettling, subtle sensations. Despite the joy for Marcus that had warmed her heart at first, she was beginning to have doubts. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with Lauren. The anxiety was vague, indistinct, but it grew stronger every day, forcing Sarah to search for answers to questions she couldn't even quite articulate. Lauren seemed to fit the image of a caring stepmother-to-be. She greeted Marcus with a smile every time he invited her to their house, kept up conversations, and sometimes even brought gifts for Sarah, cute trinkets and sweets. However, it seemed to Sarah that there was something else, something colder, behind this affability. She found that Lauren rarely made eye contact with her, and always seemed to avoid her gaze. When Lauren spoke to Marcus, her voice was warm and sincere, but when she turned her attention to Sarah, her tone became a little more reserved, sometimes formally polite. Marcus, overwhelmed with joy and renewed hope, didn't seem to notice these details. He felt happy, and that glow made him believe that together with Lauren, they could start a new family. Sarah didn't want to disappoint her father, but every day she felt a growing sense of unease. Her powers of observation, an innate trait that always set her apart from her peers, told her that Lauren wasn't as simple as she looked. One day, when Lauren came to visit again, Sarah noticed her conversation with Marcus. They discussed plans for a future home and the design of a room for Sarah. Lauren, after a moment's hesitation, suggested the idea of freeing up some of the space from things that remind you of the past to start with a clean slate. At first glance, this suggestion might have seemed reasonable, but to Sarah it seemed strange. She knew how much their family heirlooms, photographs, and things that had belonged to her mother meant to her father. The idea of getting rid of these items left her confused, and she felt a wave of resentment rise in her chest. The next day, Sarah overheard Lauren on the phone, clearly not expecting anyone to be listening. Walking down the hall, Sarah found Lauren in the living room, talking to a friend. The tone of her voice was unusually dry, and she complained that Marcus's new family was very different from her usual life. She said something like, "Yes, I'll have to get used to its idiosyncrasies. They're all so, you know." Lauren sounded annoyed, and the half-whispered comment made Sarah wary. The more Sarah listened to Lauren's words, the more suspicious she felt. She began to notice other details, such as how Lauren postponed invitations to family events or reluctantly agreed to travel related to their traditions. It was barely noticeable, but Sarah sensed that Lauren was deliberately avoiding anything that might highlight their cultural differences. At first, she thought it was her personal opinion, but every day she became more and more convinced that there was something more to Lauren's behavior. That evening, after dinner, Sarah decided to speak cautiously to her father to share her feelings. She tried to choose her words and not sound wary without reason, but Marcus dismissed her suspicions as if they were the whims of a teenager. He was so excited about the upcoming wedding and didn't seem to want to notice the hidden signals that Sarah was seeing. She, in turn, did not want to spoil his joy and for the time being kept her doubts to herself. But soon, another event occurred that increased her suspicions. One day, when Lauren was staying with them again, she suggested that Marcus buy a new dining table to match their new beginning. Sarah had heard Lauren mention that the old desk was too old-fashioned and took up too much space. But this particular table was important to Sarah and her father. It held memories of a time when their family was full and they all spent evenings together at it. Sarah sensed that Lauren was deliberately trying to get rid of everything that connected her to the past. The offer finally convinced her that Lauren didn't accept their family for what it was. Realizing that her father refused to admit any suspicions, Sarah decided to look for other ways to find out the truth about Lauren. She began to pay attention to her every word and gesture, studying every expression and tone. Her powers of observation had sharpened, and she felt that she was about to find the answer to her questions. Sarah decided not to stop until she knew what the woman's intentions were and what other secrets she might be hiding. Her suspicions were soon reinforced when she discovered that Lauren was discussing future plans with her father, not including Sarah. The future stepmother avoided discussing matters that would concern the family as a whole, and seemed more interested in the new home and the changes she could make in it. Sarah, who was used to feeling like part of the family, realized that she was a hindrance to Lauren that she would rather leave out. These suspicions persisted, and Sarah began to think more and more often that she had to find proof of Lauren's true intentions before this woman became a permanent part of their lives. Sarah noticed more and more how Lauren was acting, as if Marcus was already hers, and everything that was important to Sarah and her late mother was suddenly getting in the way and needed to be replaced. When Lauren was at their house, she often walked through the rooms with a cold, critical gaze, as if assessing each item in terms of its future role in a house that didn't already belong to her. Lauren began to suggest that Marcus rearrange things, replace old furniture, and, as she put it, freshen up the decor. However, Sarah sensed that Lauren didn't just want to update the interior, but to get rid of everything that would remind her of her mother and their family's past. Sarah could see Lauren insinuating to Marcus that his old possessions, especially family heirlooms and photographs, were taking up too much space. The girl noticed that Lauren avoided mentioning their family values and avoided topics related to their cultural traditions. To Sarah, these items and traditions were a link to her roots, a part of her identity, but to Lauren they seemed like unnecessary ballast. She seemed to perceive it all as something alien that needed to be removed from her sight as quickly as possible. When Lauren came to visit again to discuss wedding preparations, she brought a catalog with samples of furniture and accessories for the house. With a beaming smile, she opened the catalog right on the kitchen table and started telling Marcus how to transform the house. Sarah sat nearby, pretending to be absorbed in her homework, but actually listening intently. Lauren enthusiastically offered to swap their old table for a new one made of light-colored natural wood, adding that the old table is too dark and spoils the overall look of their living room. Sarah felt a surge of indignation. It was a table she and her father had kept from when her mother was still alive, and it was the centerpiece of their home-cooked dinners and family gatherings. What if we leave this table as it is? Sarah broke in suddenly, clearly aware of Lauren's surprised gaze on her. Lauren froze for a moment, clearly not expecting the girl to object, but quickly regained her composure. "Of course, honey, we're just discussing options," she said with a tight smile, but there was a hint of annoyance in her voice. Sarah realized that Lauren didn't like her intervention, but it was important for her to express her opinion. My father, however, didn't even notice the awkwardness. He was too caught up in his plans for a new life and renovation of the house to give much thought to these details. A few days later, Lauren came back to their house. This time, her visit was official. She wanted to discuss the final details of the upcoming wedding, which had very little time left. She had made it clear from the start that their lives were about to change. Sarah was in her room, but she could hear everything, because Lauren was talking quite loudly. The girl sat up in bed and tried to concentrate on her books, but the conversation from the living room wouldn't let her rest. "I thought we could redo the living room and make it brighter," Lauren said, as if dictating her wishes. "For example, these old dark shelves, perhaps it would be better to replace them with something more modern. And the photos? Well, I think it would be good for a new chapter in life to freshen up the space. Sarah felt her heart sink. The shelves Lauren had mentioned were her father's favorite corner, where he kept photos from his youth, pictures of Sarah and her mother. These photos were important to both of them, connecting them to the past and showing their shared history. But Lauren didn't seem to see any value in it, thinking that the house should belong to her style and reflect her taste. When Sarah walked into the living room to offer Lauren some tea, she saw Lauren looking around at the walls and furniture with a smirk, as if planning to get rid of everything that made their home cozy and personal. Lauren thanked her for the tea, but then said casually, "I don't know." "Oh, Sarah, it would be nice if you had your own corner for all your stuff. Then it will be easier to restore order, right?" The words pierced Sarah. To her, it sounded like a hint that her things were superfluous. It was all Sarah could do not to protest, but she realized that her father didn't seem to notice. The next day, when Marcus was at work, Lauren arrived early to discuss school matters with Sarah, under the pretense of making contact with her. However, the conversation quickly took a different turn. "Sarah," Lauren began, looking down at her books and photographs on the shelves, "has it ever occurred to you that it would be better if you focused more on your studies instead of all of this?" Sarah looked at her, not sure what Lauren was getting at. "I mean," Lauren paused, as if considering whether to continue, "you should focus on getting ready for adulthood, and maybe even consider moving to a boarding school. You're not a little girl anymore, and your father is so worried about your future." Sarah froze, her heart beating faster. Lauren's offer of a boarding school didn't sit well with her at all. Her father never talked about sending her to live apart. This was their home, and it seemed to her that no one had the right to decide for her where she should live. Lauren, meanwhile, continued to talk calmly about the prospects of a new life for all three of them, as if oblivious to Sarah's shock. "And to be honest, I think boarding school will give you more opportunities," Lauren added after a moment. "You'll meet new people, get the education you deserve." Sarah couldn't take this disregard for her life and cultural roots any longer. As she stood up to leave the room, she noticed that Lauren was frowning, apparently displeased with her reaction. Sarah felt alone and helpless in that moment. Everything that had once been dear to her in this house seemed to be in danger of disappearing. Sarah spent the next day worrying about it. She felt like she couldn't just ignore Lauren's behavior anymore. The words about boarding school and the constant hints of change finally convinced her that Lauren saw her as an obstacle and wanted to get her out of her new life with Marcus as soon as possible. Various moments flashed through her mind, and she realized that from the very beginning, Lauren had never shown her any real kindness. Only courtesy and superficial concern. This time, Sarah decided to take action and not postpone the conversation until later. She remembered that Lauren almost always came to their house with her laptop. Since she liked to be alone with her father, she probably used this time to settle some personal matters and chat with friends. The girl began to wonder if there was something important behind this technique. Perhaps Lauren was texting someone, discussing her plans or intentions? If so, it might explain her behavior and attitude toward their family. Several days passed, and Sarah waited patiently for the right moment to learn more. Finally, in the evening, when her father was late at work, Lauren came to them and lingered in the kitchen, leaving her laptop in the living room. Sarah saw that it was on, and felt that this was her chance to find out the truth. "My heart was pounding, but curiosity and anxiety got the better of me." Glancing around to make sure Lauren was still busy, Sarah went to her laptop and quickly opened it. There were several tabs on the screen, but one of them, her email, caught Sarah's attention. The girl went to the sent folder and saw that Lauren was actively corresponding with a certain friend named Victoria. Sarah's gut told her that this was where she could find the answers to her questions. After skimming through a few messages, Sarah quickly realized that this was exactly what she was looking for. In one of her last letters, Lauren openly discussed her plans to move in with Marcus and expressed her opinion about his family. In one of the paragraphs it was written, "I still don't know how long I can tolerate his daughter. It reminds him of everything that went before. To be honest, I want to get her out of the house as soon as possible. It will be easier to start with a clean slate." The words hit her like an icy wave. Now she knew for a fact that Lauren had never considered her a part of her new life. Sarah nervously continued to look through Lauren's emails. Her heart was pounding and her hands were shaking slightly with anxiety and excitement, but she knew this was her only chance to find out the truth. The fear of being caught was intertwined with a burning desire to protect their home, her family, and themselves. She held her breath as she opened another letter. This time the letter was longer than the previous one, and Lauren had written it just the day before. In the text, Lauren discussed her immediate plans with her friend Victoria and clearly felt confident. In this letter, as in the previous ones, Lauren shared in detail her intentions for a new family. Starting with general comments about wedding plans, she soon moved on to a detailed discussion of how she intended to change the house and take control of the situation. Victoria, if you knew how hard this was for me, Lauren wrote, you have no idea. Live with these family items everywhere and see these constant reminders of his past. It's just unbearable. But never mind, it's all temporary. After the wedding, I'll start building our home in my own way, and I'll also find a place for Sarah to be more comfortable. I'm already thinking about sending her to a private school where she can develop and be looked after. I think it will be useful for her, and more convenient for us. The word stung her. It was obvious to her that Lauren had always seen her as an inconvenient obstacle, not a relative. While Marcus was planning a new life, believing that it was all for their future, Lauren, on the contrary, was hatching plans to push Sarah out of the house and devalue everything that was dear and close to their hearts. She continued reading, turning page after page. In the next letter, Lauren made an even more explicit confession, which confirmed Sarah's worst suspicions. You know, Victoria, it won't be a problem for me once I get access to his accounts. Marcus is a generous man, you can tell that. He doesn't know how to say no, especially if he believes he's doing it for his family. I can gradually manage his finances, and if Sarah is away, it will become even easier. Sarah fought back tears, unable to believe that anyone could be so cold and calculating to their family, who received Lauren with kindness and openness. She knew that Lauren only saw her father as a convenient way to arrange her life, and that she was a hindrance that needed to be removed. To gather as much evidence as possible, Sarah decided to take screenshots of these emails. Quickly copying the contents of the correspondence, she inserted her flash drive into the laptop and transferred the files. Now she had all the evidence on hand, but the sense of injustice still tore at her soul. How could my father not have noticed this before? How could she have doubted herself for so long? With a heavy sigh, Sarah unplugged the laptop and put it back on the couch, leaving it where it was. She realized that her father, preoccupied with the prospect of a new life, hadn't even noticed the hidden manipulation on Lauren's part. Marcus trusted her and was willing to do anything for the sake of his new family, not noticing that she planned to gradually subdue him. Sarah left the living room determined to talk to her father. Soon, when the time came, she would tell him what she had learned. The wedding day arrived, and the atmosphere was filled with light and joy. The flowers arranged neatly on each table exuded a light fragrance, the wedding decorations shimmered in the sunlight, and the guests dressed in fancy suits and dresses smiled and whispered as they waited for the ceremony to begin. Everything seemed to be working out perfectly for this long-awaited day. However, for Sarah, this was not only a day of celebration, but also a moment of truth. Sarah felt a mixture of anxiety and determination. She was holding on to a hard truth that she was willing to reveal regardless of the consequences. She knew that her father, preoccupied with his new life, was unaware of Lauren's dark intentions. Today, before he made a big decision, she had to risk telling him what she'd discovered. Her father, dressed in a dark blue suit and with a kind smile on his face, was busy meeting guests, shaking hands, thanking them for congratulations and joking with relatives. Lauren, in an elegant wedding dress, charmed everyone, smiling and accepting compliments with dignity. Her posture and confidence impressed the guests, and no one would have guessed that behind that mask were intentions that only Sarah knew about. Sarah, realizing that there wasn't much time left, went up to her father without being noticed and called out softly to him. Marcus turned to her, surprised by her serious expression. "Dad, we need to talk," Sarah whispered, looking him straight in the eye. Marcus, while noticing her tension, clearly didn't understand the gravity of the situation. He smiled sweetly and leaned down to put his arm around her shoulders. "Sarah, honey, we'll talk later, okay? Today is a special day, I don't want to be distracted," he said, stroking her hand with a smile. But Sarah wasn't going to back down. She sighed and spoke softly but firmly. "Dad, this is very important. I can't keep quiet any longer. You need to know the truth right now. Hearing her words, Marcus was embarrassed, and his face took on a serious expression. He nodded, glancing at the guests, and then carefully led Sarah out of the hall and into a quieter corner of the garden where they could talk in peace. "Sarah, what happened? What is it?" he asked, looking her straight in the eye with wariness and concern. Sarah, struggling with her emotions, began to tell her how she had stumbled upon Lauren's correspondence, what cold and calculating plans she had made. Carefully, she explained everything she'd learned, Lauren's intentions to send her to boarding school, get rid of the family values, change the house in her own way, and gain control of Marcus's money. The girl shared every detail, including screenshots of the correspondence, which she transferred to a flash drive. When Sarah finished her story, Marcus froze for a moment, as if he couldn't believe what she was saying. His face showed first bewilderment, then pain, and finally a flash of anger. He listened intently, not interrupting his daughter, only nodding occasionally, as if trying to make sense of her every word. His usual confidence was beginning to fade, and in its place was confusion and frustration. Marcus took the flash drive from Sarah's hand and inserted it into his smartphone to view the screenshots that his daughter had so carefully saved. The more he read, the more cold reality hit him. In every word Lauren said, in every sentence, he could see her talking disdainfully about Sarah, about his family traditions, about how she would manage the family's finances. Her fake smile, her friendly manner, everything that had seemed real to him before, suddenly crumbled to dust. "Dad, I know this is hard to hear," Sarah said, fighting back tears. "But I couldn't let you tie your life to someone who doesn't respect us, doesn't love us, and sees us as nothing but a barrier." Marcus looked at his daughter, and there was a mixture of pain and gratitude in his eyes. He nodded slowly, as if agreeing with her determination and honesty. He wrapped his arms around her and they stood there for a few moments before he finally stepped back and took a deep breath, steadying himself. "You're right, Sarah. I can't let that happen," he finally said. His voice was hoarse, but full of determination. "Thank you for telling me." Marcus and Sarah returned to their guests, and he stopped at the bottom of the stairs where Lauren stood, unaware of the impending revelation. When Lauren saw them, she started toward them with a big smile, but Marcus held up a hand to cut her off. "We need to talk, Lauren, right now," he said firmly, and his voice was loud enough for some of the guests to turn around, surprised by the groom's unusual tone. Lauren froze in place, her face contorting for a moment, but she quickly regained the familiar smile she wore every time someone asked awkward questions. "Of course, Marcus. Is something wrong?" Her tone was affectionate, but Sarah saw a momentary flicker of concern in her eyes. Marcus didn't lose his nerve as he pulled out his phone and showed Lauren the screenshots, the same ones Sarah had taken. He watched her carefully, and as she read the messages, her face paled and her confidence faded. Suddenly, her expression turned into a frown, her lips tightened, and she stopped pretending. It's not what you think, Marcus," she finally said, but her voice was trembling treacherously. "What then, Lauren? What is it?" he asked coldly. "If this isn't proof of your intentions, then what is it?" In front of everyone, Lauren was losing her composure, unable to find an excuse for her words, which were now open to everyone. The guests who were previously engaged in their own conversations now witnessed this revelation. Lauren froze in front of Marcus, frozen. Her eyes darted from his stern expression to the phone screen, where all her emails were displayed. She knew that any excuses in this situation would sound fake and useless, but she tried to maintain a semblance of confidence. Her face, normally composed, seemed to be frozen in a mask of fear and rage as the guests surrounding them watched in complete silence. A few people were talking in whispers, a few raised eyebrows, not understanding what was going on, but all eyes were on Lauren and Marcus. Marcus, feeling betrayed, was determined to make this revelation final and public. He knew that his friends, relatives, and colleagues present at the event all saw him as a man who had finally found happiness after so many years of loneliness. It was important to him that they understand why he made this decision, so that everyone could see Lauren's true face. Lauren tried to pull herself together and said with a tight smile, "Marcus, you know how easy it is to misinterpret spelled words. This is all just a misunderstanding. I may have put it wrong, but you know I love you and Sarah." But Marcus wasn't going to let her get away with it. He took a step forward, his gaze hard and merciless, as if he could see right through her. A misunderstanding? He repeated, his voice as cold as ice. I've read every word you've said, Lauren. Every sentence, every revelation where you talk about my daughter as a nuisance. Where do you plan on getting her out of our house to feel comfortable? Where you call our life, our home, and our memories superfluous. The guests standing around froze. Their faces reflected a full range of emotions, from surprise to anger to disappointment. Everyone knew that a real revelation was unfolding before them. Lauren, seeing that she was unable to mitigate the situation, began to show signs of despair. She turned to the group, hoping for sympathy. Please understand, she said to her guests, that sometimes words can distort the meaning. I just wanted to create a cozy space for our new family, so that everything would be perfect. Is that a crime? Marcus just shook his head, clearly disappointed and tired of her lies. Cozy space? He paused to let the words sink into the minds of all his listeners. Is that all you see in our family? Cozy space without my memories? Without my daughter? In that moment, it was clear that Lauren couldn't hide her truth anymore. Lauren, no longer able to keep her usual mask on, looked directly at Marcus, her face contorted into an exasperated grimace. She realized that the support of the guests was slipping away, and any explanation now would sound empty. A tense pause hung in the air as Marcus continued, his eyes on hers, calm and confident. You spoke of your love for my daughter, of the support you were going to give her, but I see the opposite in every word you say. Your only wish is to get rid of her, to cut her out of our lives. My family and memories are not something you can just give up. Lauren, knowing that the situation wasn't going to turn in her favor, suddenly changed her tactics. Her voice was hard, and there was a hidden anger in it. You don't even realize, Marcus, how hard it was for me to accept all of this. She took a step forward, her words starting to sound sharper. Yes, I wanted to create a new home for us, a real family. But with such a legacy, with these eternal reminders of the past, how could I feel like a full part of this life? Lauren's words struck a cold silence among the guests, who seemed taken aback by her revelation. Some people started whispering to each other, their looks became critical and their faces became judgmental. Lauren looked around the room again, this time with an expression of indignation. Marcus straightened up, his voice even more firm, as if every sentence he uttered was a final blow. This family is not just a legacy. This is my life, Lauren. This is the memory of my wife and the love for my daughter. What you consider a hindrance is sacred to me. And you were never a part of it, because all you needed was a comfortable life and control. Lauren, realizing that Marcus's words had not only destroyed her image in the eyes of the guests, but also completely destroyed her ability to reunite with him, turned abruptly, giving him a look of anger. She realized that she had lost everything, and her attempt to build her life at the expense of others had failed. Marcus, on the other hand, turned to his daughter, who was standing behind him, looking both relieved and sad, feeling her support and strength. The guests began to leave, talking quietly about what had happened and giving Lauren looks of disapproval. After Lauren left the wedding hall, Marcus and Sarah were left surrounded by guests, many of whom were stunned and upset by what had happened. At first, no one knew what to say, but soon people started coming up to Marcus and Sarah, offering words of encouragement and comfort. Marcus saw close friends and relatives hugging his daughter, praising her for her courage and strength, because it was she, despite her age, who saved their family from deep disappointment and possible destruction. It was a painful but also cleansing moment for Marcus. He realized that his love for Lauren had blinded him, and he had almost forgotten what was really important. After all, family ties, trust, and respect are what truly connect people, not the illusion of a perfect life with someone who doesn't share those values. When the flow of guests had subsided somewhat, Marcus put his arm around Sarah and said softly, I don't know. You have no idea how proud I am of you. You saved me from a mistake that could have destroyed us. Sarah smiled, feeling not only like his daughter, but also like a true ally. For the first time, she felt that her relationship with her father was stronger than ever. This event showed her that she can always trust her father, and that he will listen to her opinion and believe her intuition. As the evening wore on, Marcus realized that this wasn't just the end of his relationship with Lauren, but the beginning of a new chapter with his daughter. He didn't need to look for happiness anywhere else, it was already there, in his family, in this close and sincere relationship that he and Sarah had shared over the years. When the evening ended and the guests began to leave, Marcus and Sarah were left alone in the now empty hall. They stood there in silence, looking at each other with the knowledge that they had passed through a difficult ordeal and had only grown stronger. Marcus took her hands in his and smiled warmly. "You will always be my support, Sirachka." This day showed that the most valuable thing in life is our family and our trust in each other. "We will always be together, no matter how difficult it is." Sarah nodded, knowing that her courage and sincerity had helped keep their family together. This day of dramatic revelations has become a reminder that true love is not about external promises and beautiful words, but about deep loyalty and a willingness to protect each other. If you're moved by this story, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on even more inspiring stories about how honesty and trust help keep your family together. Write in the comments what you would do if you were in Sarah's place. Would you dare to tell the truth?